So putting a T56 in a G body is relatively easy if you have an LS. It's just bolts and screws here and there, drive shaft. But there's a lot of features of the T56 that you get when you get a Camaro Firebird, F-body, whatever, that you don't have when you swap the car. For example, when you put your 6-speed in, this is in a Grand Prix in '86, unless you disable or remove the reverse lockout, going into reverse will be very tough. So you got your first, second, third range, no problem, but getting into reverse is really tough. You can force it over and push it forward, but it's very challenging and is probably not the best for the transmission. So there is a reverse lockout solenoid on the bottom that you can wire up. I have an 01 PCM out of like a Sierra 1500 pickup, 4L60 transmission, and you segment swap it with an LS T56 Camaro Firebird with HP tuners, and you can have it set up so it's like 5 miles an hour below. It lets you go into reverse, and anything above that, it locks it out. So if you turn the key on, I can now go into reverse super easy, where before it was really tough. Also, you can wire up the reverse lights. So unless you put your reverse lights on, obviously if you back up you won't be able to do it. Well, this is pretty easy too. Again, now I'm in reverse, and there's lights, and it's out of reverse, and no lights. So that's done by hooking up to the side port on the transmission. So every G body has a selector switch in the column. So this part here rotates. That won't rotate if you have a manual, unless you have like the very specific early 78 to 80 Malibu, El Camino, Cutlass, whatever shifter linkages, which aren't exactly easy to find, but you don't need that. All you need to do is, there's a plug here, it's blue and green wire, which goes on that white moon-shaped part, mounts on the back of the column. You remove that and put some new wires and pin into it, and then run those wires through wherever, but I use the shifter hole where your cable used to sit for the transmission with the floor shifter. If you don't have that, you can drill it or put a grommet in or whatever, but since it was there, I used it. And then go out underneath the car. So before we get there, the one that you can see with that really crappy looking tan tape, that is the throttle or speed sensor for the vehicle speed sensor for your computer. And then if you look up there, there's that big blob sitting by the frame rail, or by the floor pan. I had to hammer that quite a bit to get it to fit. People say you have to cut the floor pans out on T56 fit builds, but mine fit in there decent. You end up having your drive shaft a little bit lower than normal, and your angles and everything, doodads, don't say quite factory, but it's close enough for what you're doing probably. So that plug there is actually, I believe, like a throttle position or something I pulled off of a 3800 harness laying around in the garage, and then just wire butted it to the 4L60E connector that I cut off my harness, and then just repinned the ECM with those two wires that I cut and plugged them into the ECM. So I didn't even have to run any wires. I just repinned them up on the ECM and we did them on the plug back there. So what I really went down here for originally was to talk about the reverse light thing. So that plug there is a 2-prong weather pack with two male pinouts that go right into the side of the transmission. Then I just ran some conduit over it to look pretty and not get destroyed. So that, if you plug something in there and use that as the switch instead of the switch that's on the column, that's all you need for reverse lights. And then all you need for the reverse lockout solenoid is to plug something in there and then do a segment swap in your transmission. And if I can get out from underneath my car without dying. So, yeah, that's how you do it. And then I also have all the gauges minus the speedometer work. And this is all done by a 98 factory position, Firebird, Trans Am, Camaro, whatever. Sensor, mounts in the head, direct swap, repinned an existing wire in the harness that I pulled, I think it was for the EGR or something, and then just spliced it down at the harness, wire butted the connectors, and then connected it, ran it through the harness, and then I got this big octopus over here, which is weather packs, and then everything for like the cruise, temperature, oil pressure, etc. goes through there. So then if I want to pull the engine, it's super easy. And then it just runs through the grommet where you have, where like the, if you have a cruise control car, where the cruise control speed cables run through the firewall. This also has the factory gauge that works perfectly fine. I used a 99-02 sensor. You just hook the wire up like you would any other older GM sensor. You don't have to worry about any adapters, mechanical or adapters or whatever. Ignore people that tell you need to buy that. You just buy the factory sensor or use the one you have on your engine. Hook the wire up, run a wire inside the cab, and that fixes it. It's not that complicated. And then I also use the factory one block of the 3 that is in a Silverado, Tahoe, whatever you want to call it. I just remove the body and ABS ones, so all I have is this one. And you need Metra Pack connectors, which look like this. You can get them through Waytech Wire is where I got them. They're cheap. You have to buy like bags of 50 of them or something. They're Metra Pack 280 series female. And those will go into your block, and you can basically, it's modular, you can put your wires wherever you want. You can put as many relays and stuff as you want. And then if you weren't familiar with WeatherPack, it'd be a 2-prong version of this, just like off-the-shelf one. You don't have to cut down any special slots or anything to get it to fit. And you put that series, the male WeatherPack connector, into there, and that just goes for your reverse lockout. So bouncing topics a lot here, but yeah. So gauges do work.